Dale might be back. I saw she had a sign out in front of her house, but I haven't heard from her. She is? Yeah. Oh, you did? Okay. Okay. I changed it, yeah. Yeah, I didn't hear from her, so I wasn't sure what was going on. I just drove by her house today and saw that. I thought she might be home. Okay. So we're expecting her to show up, maybe. All right. My heat's not on because it's so warm out, and yet my basement is freezing, so I had to turn my space heater on. Kathy? You're muted, Kathy. Well, there's a lot of people. There she is. There's a lot of people, and they need to get vaccinated. So, and a lot of them are up late. So, like that's some of them work during the day, so it helps. Yeah. No. Well, they just said in Washtenaw and Wayne counties that you should have if you should have an appointment in the next 2 weeks if you're over 65. You should have an appointment in the next 2 weeks. They're promising that to everybody. So, but she's in Oakland, so I don't know anything about Oakland County. Yeah. Yeah, but Char, you might tell Jane to look at the Rite Aids in Trump counties. Like my friend Melissa, she easily got an appointment at a Rite Aid in South Lyon, and I've heard a ton of people in Brighton and South Lyon because some of those Trumpsters aren't getting the vaccines, and they've got them in those areas. Yeah. Oh, the other thing is that I think is absolutely true, and you should tell her this too. That when people break their Rite Aid appointments, the site doesn't upgrade until midnight. But if you go in like at 12:01, right after midnight, all those broken appointments are all of a sudden available. So you might tell her to look at right after midnight. Maybe, but maybe, yeah. But anyway, going on at midnight is supposed to be a helpful thing too. Everybody's here. Hey, Dale, welcome home. I thought you were home because I saw your spring sign out in front of your house. So Dale, we've been, some people are leaving themselves unmuted, and so if you want to make sure that your video doesn't go back and forth, you would have to pin me by hovering over my picture on your gallery. Otherwise, if somebody with an unmuted mic makes noise, you'll see them instead of me. Are you kidding me? Everybody knows that. I think so. I think it's pretty. I mean, I like seeing it. And when I was a kid, for some reason, I just loved that saying. I don't know why. Oh, I think that people do. People like it. Oh, because you were on Zoom. You could have even done yoga. Oh, all your stuff. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still waiting for my haircut. I have an appointment at the end of March when I'm fully vaccinated. You didn't get a vaccine though, right, Dale? Oh, you did down in Florida? I heard they weren't giving them to Michiganders. So good. All right, good. Turn my space heater off and we'll get started. Yeah, she's muted. Yeah, yeah. So I was just reading about the long haulers COVID. An article in the Atlantic that was super interesting, and they think it's about people's immune system going awry more than anything else, and um, they're training people to breathe as one of the rehab things that they do, and so I just I just copied a few of the paragraphs. He said they're talking about trying to figure out what was going on with the long haulers, and he said the Mount Sinai teams found breathing. Everyone, they were looking for a piece of the puzzle that was making everybody sicker. Everyone knew, of course, about severely sick COVID patients on ventilators. And when the researchers and doctors at Mount Sinai hadn't realized was that even mild cases might be affecting respiration after the acute phase of the disease. Evidence began to accrue that long COVID patients were breathing shallowly through their mouth and into their upper chest. By contrast, a proper breath happens in the nose and goes deep into the diaphragm. It stimulates the vagus nerve along the way, helping regulate heart rate and the nervous system, which is exactly what we practice all the time. Many of us breathe through our mouth, slightly compromising our respiration. But in patients with post-acute COVID syndrome, lung inflammation or another trigger appeared to have profoundly affected the process. In these cases, patients' breathing is just completely off. So they started using breath work in rehab, and it started giving people some of their energy back and losing their dizziness. And balancing out the carbon dioxide levels in the blood. And so in the rehab, they're using, because people get these elevated heart rates just from sitting up in bed. People were learning how to breathe through their nose, take long breaths, and they had these exercises where they had to breathe in for 4 counts and exhale for 6 counts, etc. And it helped. It helped patients consciously control their heart rate. And that's what I found when I used to run and breathe through my nose, that I could keep my heart rate down but still run at an okay clip. And just any kind of aerobic work, if you can teach yourself to breathe through your nose, you can start to control your heart rate. It's just nice to see this doctors saying this. And that when you can do that, you can control the fight or flight syndrome, and so that you don't get elevated stress hormones. And proper breathing is crucial to circulation in the lymphatic system, often described as the body's highway for immune cells, which plays a role in eliminating toxins and waste. So that was just an interesting thing to read, scientifically based information about breath that we've been doing for a long time. Interlock your fingers, reach out and up, and breathe in and out through your nose. They said that teaching people to do that again, that people were breathing shallowly because breathing was so hard, but teaching people to actually breathe through their nose was difficult. And you have to exercise your diaphragm, which is what we do all the time. We'll turn to the right. And back to center. And to the left. Back to center. Bring your hands behind the head. And reach up. Hold the elbows. And reach again. And fold. Come back up. Change your interlock. And reach up. And turn to the right. And to center. And the left. And to center. Bring your hands behind the head. And reach up. Hold your elbows. Reach again. Fold. And then come up. So you need, we're going to sit on our chair. You can put a sticky mat on it if you want. You need your stool, a little sticky mat or a big sticky mat on top of the stool, and some blankets and your bolster nearby. Oh, good. Astrid is the pin doctor. Thank you, Astrid. She did look a little grown up there. Well, when Astrid turns 40, then we'll know we're really older. So the first thing you want to do is make your stool a bit higher, because we're going to practice Baddha Konasana. And if your feet are a lot below the height of your chair, which they should be a little bit, you might feel like you need to lift your heels a little bit so so you don't distort your ankles. And this seems like it's a Baddha Konasana practice, but I call it the road to Kandasana. And because these are the Kandasan poses. Yeah, that's what I said. So I doubt very much we'll be doing that in our lifetime. But instead of thinking about this as Baddha Konasana, I've been thinking about it as the road to Kandasana, and it just changes my relationship with it a little bit. So don't go up as high as you think you possibly can. Give yourself a little bit of a warm-up here. If one knee is higher than the other, then more than likely your feet aren't centered. And you want to sit, on the front half of your chair, and you want to draw the heels in towards yourself as much as possible, closing up your knees. And if you set up and your knees are still way high, then you should make the stool lower. So we'd like to as we sit up, instead of thinking about the knees as being high, you want to think about them as they're too close together. And so you want to set yourself up so you can make the space between the knees a little higher. And one of the things is by walking forward and getting very distinctly on your sit bones. And you can use the chair to help you sit up nice and high. So the other reason a knee might be higher than the other is because you're sitting on one buttock more than the other. But honestly, if your feet don't meet in the center, you're going to be off center. So one of the things that you want to think about, and it's hard for a lot of us, is that the thigh bone needs to rotate so that the top of the thigh bone is more upright than looking backwards. And so as you lift yourself up and draw your tailbone forward, you might be able to find a little bit of that action. And then the other thing that helps is the heels and the little toe side of the feet pressing actively together. And then as you lift up, you want to broaden the chest and broaden the diaphragm and breathe, which we know how to do. So you definitely want to press the heels and the little toe side of the feet, because that's what brings you your attention into the hip sockets. All right, and then either with your bolster or with a couple of folded blankets. We're going to do that thing where it wraps around. So I'm just going to get another bolster. But you could use the bolster there. It's easy to put it enough to put back if you have to. And you'll bring I think we did this a few weeks ago. You'll bring the legs wide and turn the heels below the knees, the legs turned out, and sitting back on the chair further than we normally do, and taking your bolster, a couple folded blankets, and leaning forward, pulling it up the back, cupping the hands underneath the bolster, and so you're going to sit back so that the bolster touches the back of the chair, and you're going to just make yourself nice and broad here. So that a lot of times when we breathe, we think about the breath going up and down, but we don't think so much about how we want the breath to open ourselves up this way, which is a very much more complicated situation. And here this helps a lot. When I first saw a picture of David Maloney doing this, I thought, that's just silly. And then when I tried it, I'm like, not so silly. I've practiced this quite a bit since I first started practicing it maybe a month ago. And it has really changed my relationship with my breath, and even with how to broaden the torso, including lengthening it. So what's neat about this is you can hold on to the chair back, or you can hold on to the bottom of your blankets or bolster. But this might give you a little bit of information about how to get the trapezius muscle to rest down the back rather than to come forward. And the upper arms and the shoulders and the lift of the chest and the broadening of the chest really helps with that. So you want to take some nice, long, deep breaths. And then if you want to make your stool higher or lower, now would be a good time. So I do think it's important that you understand that it's not about the knees coming down, but it's about the knees moving away from each other, because it's a different action, and it's a whole different relationship with what's going on. And, in the long run, we're looking to spin that thigh bone so it faces up more than back. And we're looking to get those calves and shins resting on our blankets. And at the same time, we want to breathe fully, and so we want to both lengthen the spine and broaden the torso. Broaden the diaphragm area. Pressing the heels and the little toe side of the feet together and lifting up. And trying very hard not to sit on her tailbone, but to sit on the sit bones. And to get the trapezius muscle, that thick muscle at the upper back, and actually goes way down the back, to slide down the back rather than to come forward. All right, so we're going to do this again, and once the width of the knees once it starts backfiring because we've lifted it so high and the knees start to come towards each other, then we've gone too high for ourselves. But some of us could go up higher, and if you call this the road to Kandasana, you would, you'd keep the knees wide and on your bolster and start to lift the shin bones up higher. So if you want to see about making your stuff higher one more time, you can. You'll know when you've gone too high. I think I might have just gone too high. Because once you've gone too high when you've added height, and instead of helping the knees broaden away from each other, they start climbing back in towards each other. And the higher you go, the more you want to pull your pubic bone towards your heels, and your heels towards your pubic bone. Edie disappeared, but I missed when she left, and now she's just gone. I don't know where she is. All right, so now you try not to do this from your upper chest, but from leaning the pelvis forward. You can catch your shins, or you can catch your feet, and you got to broaden the knees. And it's like you want to bring the navel forward as much as possible. And it's a little scary, but it's not terrible. You just start coming forward. You can, to stop the back from rounding a lot, you can bring those elbows forward of your shins. You want to keep bringing the sternum out into the light. Right now, push the heels and little toe sides of the feet together, and the knees are moving in opposite directions, and your navel and sternum are coming forward. All right, good. So let's stand up. We're going to come back to this, but it's easy enough to rebuild. So, but you do want the chair in front of you. Going to do a couple sets of Trikonasana because in Trikonasana, when we stand initially, we want to bring the knees really far away from each other, and we don't generally do that. So we're going to use the chair for some confidence. And here's my normal Trikonasana stance, but I've got the chair here, and I'm going to go much wider. So what happens once you go wider and you turn your leg out, you end up bringing your heel in, and all of a sudden you're not as wide as you thought you were. And so when you've gone wider, and you've spent some time going wider, I think you might want to turn your mat. Do you have a cross mat there, Tyra? There you go. When you turn your foot out, you want to keep the heel where it is. So rather than pulling the heel towards you, you want to turn your toes away. So then all of a sudden you're much wider than you normally are. We're going to go to the left first. And the first thing you got to do is pull that right thigh bone into the hip socket. Press the weight into your heels and then your big toes. Float the arms. And this is something that we've been doing. I forgot to tell you to put your bricks down. So I'm going to need mine, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to go back to my extra wide stance. And then keep my heel where it is to turn my leg out. And then straighten my legs. And I can use the chair to help me feel stable if I don't. Pressing into the heels and the big toes and floating the arms. And I think we've been doing this. We want to shrug that left shoulder forward as we come down so that we don't let that shoulder go back as we fold. We're going to keep the legs straight and find our bricks. And reach that right arm up. Now you can think about your knees. Yeah, you have the chair here, and it'll help you if you feel like you're not stable. You have to push that left shoulder forward, even though the left hand is behind on the little toe side of the foot. And you're going to extend the spine. Keep pushing that left shoulder forward. And now the knees. We want to try to feel like we're pressing the knees farther and farther away from each other. And then you can add the arm if you feel stable. And you can pull the chin away from the chest. I think we've done Trikonasana almost every class in the Zoom world. And hoping that we get something different out of it each time we practice it. So it's easier to look up the more you push your left shoulder forward. All right, you can use the chair if you need to, but otherwise you're going to pull yourself up with the right arm and turn your left leg forward. Turn your legs a little wider. And now again, when you turn the other way, instead of bringing the heel closer to you, you're going to bring the toes farther away. And pull that left thigh bone into the hip socket and float the arm. And now as you fold, you want to keep shrugging the right shoulder forward a little bit so that it never goes backwards. And it keeps the chest open toward the light there. Even though the hands on the little toe side of the feet, you're shrugging, you're pushing and shoving and shrugging that right shoulder forward. And the chair is here for balance if you need it. You can add the left arm if you want. And then you want to think about your knees, and somewhere in there you want to see, can you press the knees away from each other? And if you want to look up, the more you shrug that right shoulder forward, the easier it will be. And also pulling the chin away from the chest. And then press into the heels and the big toes and pull yourself up with your left arm. Turn forward. If you think you've gotten narrower, go a little wider. Make sure both feet start out facing forward. We're just going to do one more set of Trikonasana. Sweetie Pie has gotten very bold with her yoga class participation. This is a new thing where she climbs up on my chair, and then when I sit down, she won't leave. We're going to turn that left leg out. Got to pull that right thigh bone into the hip socket. Pull the thigh muscles up and into the bone. And right away, pull that left shoulder forward. Reach out into your fingertips. And then the idea is that the torso and pelvis are lifting up. And the whole time you're shrugging that left shoulder forward. And finding your brick. Extending the spine, keeping that left shoulder shrugged forward. If you have your balance, the right arm up. The thigh bones into the hip socket. So that left thigh bone, as it pulls into the hip socket, will help bring that whole left side of the hip in line to your pose. And as the right thigh bone pulls into the hip socket, your response is to try to pull the knees as far away from each other as you can. You can look up. If you pull the chin away from the chest and shrug the left shoulder forward. And then pull yourself up and turn center. And just adjust your stance a little bit. Go a little wider if you can. When you turn your right foot out, the toes turn away rather than the heels coming in. And really that is what you do. But you can see the difference. When I just pivot on my heel, I still have a nice wide stance. But if I instead pull my heel in, I've lost that length. All right. So now you have to keep that right shoulder shrugged forward and that right thigh bone pressed into the hip socket, which helps keep that right side of the hip in line. Extending through the left leg, lifting up and over your right thigh bone, extending the spine as you come down, and continuing to bring that right shoulder forward even as you fold and extend. And then think about something that you could do to try to press the knees away from each other. Pushing the right shoulder forward, the chin away from the chest. You can look up if it's comfortable. All right, and then pull yourself up with your left arm. Turn forward. And step together. I don't know what to do with you. I hate knocking you off. Yeah. So now, I turn the chair sideways here. I'm just going to get you another chair. Or maybe I'll get another chair. You stay over here. It's unclear. It's absolutely unclear. I have a lot of chairs, so you know those rules you have with your animals. One of them is we don't bother our cats if they're hanging around us. All right. So you can put a sticky mat and a blanket on the seat of your chair here if you want to pad it up a little bit. And then your bolster. So I know that with my injured leg, when I bring it up on the chair, my bolster needs to be higher, but with my uninjured leg, I can be down lower. I think that's how it works. So here's my injured leg. I'm going to put it, so we're going to put our left leg on a bolster, And it's very possible that you'll need your bolster to be higher. And then you have to figure out how to do this. So what I like to do is I'm putting my right leg up on the chair. I'm putting the shin bone on the chair. And then I'm bringing my left knee down to the floor, to the bolster. And I don't know if you can see this. My shin bone, my thigh and my shin, they're resting on the chair seat. Kind of like the Ekapada Raja Kapotasana action. So it's kind of like, you can see this, kind of like that. But we'll have the standing leg down low. It's a little awkward getting into it. It ends up that your right heel is in line with your left groin. Your left toes are curled under, and you're here. So the thing that makes this more doable is to make the bolster on the floor higher. Because you don't want this right leg to pop up off the chair. And so when it does, that means you need to make the floor higher. The right heel in front of the left groin. And it's easiest if you're just folded forward. As you lift up, you got to pull the tailbone towards your heel, and you can lift up and stand up here. And you can broaden like you have that bolster behind you, which would be nice to have, but too complicated. People are still getting into this, so hang in there. You okay? Okay, if you're not, I'm calling 911. All right. 911? Hello, 911? One of my yoga students just fell. There was a big funny article in a New Yorker probably a year ago that was like, hello 911, and it was all these ridiculous reasons to call 911, and it was funny because some people have done that. And so if you, instead of just again pulling away to stand up, you gotta push the tailbone in and let this open up here. All right, and now we'll switch. So you can get out of there. So I know I need an extra bolster for this other leg. Or I did yesterday anyway. So I imagine you could put your knee down first and then get your left leg up, but I have found that I need to get the leg up and then put my knee down. So it looks like this on the other side. And again, the left heel in line with the right groin. And then, while you're here, you can work at bringing the tailbone forward and lifting up. If you feel like you can come away from the chair, you can. You don't have to. You can hold on to the chair. And we'll lift up. you want to sit on down as you lift up. This is a different way of supporting this position. We often do it on the floor. We lift our hips up. I actually like this better because it gives the hips a little bit of space to start to move into the pose. We were on the other side a long time because Kathy said no. Because it took everybody a while to figure it out. So we'll just stay here for a little bit. Breathe in. All right, and then we're going to switch. It is a little scary when you're doing yoga and a cat's staring at you. They always look like they're either going to kill you or they're mad at you. Or she does anyway. She's always, I know she's not mad at me, but she always looks a little like she is. So once you get set up, you could straighten that back leg. And you can come away from the back of the chair. And you can push your tailbone forward, but press the thigh bone up towards your hamstrings, and lift yourself away here. And then I think if you want to lift your arms, you could interlock your thumbs, hook your thumbs, and lift up. All right, and then we'll switch. I'm getting my second vaccine on Wednesday. So I'm both looking forward to it and dreading it. I'm hoping I don't have a reaction. So you want to get your heel lined up with your groin. And even if you don't want to straighten the leg up fully, you could still walk the leg back a bit, but you can, if you want to lengthen that leg, you got to press the thigh bone into the hamstrings. You got to keep that left hip down. And if you want to come away, you have to push the tailbone forward to lift up from your pubic bone. And if you want to add the arms, I think you should hook the thumbs. And then you pull the shoulders back. All right, and then come out carefully. I got my chair back, huh? And now we're going to go back to Baddha Konasana, the road to Khandasana. too high. I watched Coming to America, that sequel to Coming to America that they made, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. The movie was okay, but the costumes were incredible, and it's worth watching just to see all the African prints, all the print of the fabric and everything. The colors were just delightful. It was a feast for the eyes. And the music was good. Figure this is Kit's class. She likes this. And maybe not everybody's cup of tea. But oddly, that little bit of work that we just did on the chair actually makes the Baddha Konasana, the road to Khandasana, a little bit more accessible. So Heidi, I don't know, are you sitting like this, or is it your camera? Okay, so it seems like that's the way you are. So I think you should get on your right buttock a little bit more. Okay. You think it's your knee? All right. When you look down, does it seem like where your feet meet? It's right in the center of your midline? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, see, that's better already. Yeah. But you are sitting a little like this. It's interesting. But now, actually, I can see that it might be your right hip and knee, because you're sitting a little bit more. Well, use the chair. Hold on to the chair behind you to help you move forward on your sit bones and lift up a bit. And see if you can't put a little more weight on the right sit bone. It's better already. Press the heels and the little toe side of the feet together. And let the body broaden. And then go ahead and, again, don't do this by dropping the chest, but by bringing the navel and then the sternum forward. And keeping the knees broad. See, so what we're trying to get to, come on up, on our road to Khandasana, is to get the shin bones pretty parallel to the floor. And the feet the same height, the heel's the same height as the pubic bone. So that's where we're moving towards. And then the next thing would be to start to lift the feet and shins up, and leave the thighs down. So if this is your pose, then you might want to just lift the feet up a little bit higher and see what happens. So I decided to work on Baddha Konasana because my Baddha Konasana has gotten better over the years, because it used to be, my knees and my ears. But I've never had a loving relationship with it, because I've always had to work myself into it. And so I just decided I'd work on this hip rotation a little bit, and this is the stuff I've been doing. Kathy's just fallen today. Too much fun. So you can pull the big toe side of the feet away from each other, except not the circumference of the heel. And that also helps with the widening. You can see when I do that, my knees go wider. And you might as well pull the shoulders up and around and broaden your chest. Okay, took that as a challenge. So you have to remember, that as you slowly lift the feet up, you want the thighs to stay down and the knees to stay wide. And now she knows how everybody else feels. There we go. Okay, good. Undo. While we're opening the groin and the hips and everything, let's do some Urdhva Dhanurasana on the back of the chair, because we're on the chair here. So you can pad up the back of your chair with a sticky mat and a blanket. And we've got all this other stuff out, so I think it's always nice not to have to lift up as much, because you end up going higher. So you can go ahead and make the seat of your chair nice and high. And let's have a brick to put between our legs, because that challenges our hips too. You don't want to sit up so high that you can't keep the toes on the floor, and the heels up the legs of the chair. And the brick goes as high up on your thighs as you can, and you're going to hold it lightly together. So the other thing that article talked about was when muscles start shaking, and it kind of corroborated a lot of the things that we've always said in yoga, that the muscles start shaking because the nervous system is not toned. And so if you find yourself shaking, often you're just using your muscles too hard. But if you back off a little of that and move your way into your breath, what they say, sometimes the shaking was about oxygen deprivation in the nervous system and in the muscles. And so if you find yourself in that position, breathing is the thing to do. So the toes are on the floor, the heels are on the chair legs, and when because you're sitting up high, when you lean back, you're going to be higher up your back than lower down your back than on the shoulder blades, which is good. And now you're going to let you can bring the hands behind you and the shoulders behind you, and let the body broaden, and just keep the head in a comfortable spot. You have a couple things you can do with the head. You can keep it looking forward, or if you're comfortable, you can hold the head with interlocked fingers and wide elbows, or you can let the head spill back in line with the spine, any of those things. But when you hold on to the brick, you want to do it from the upper leg, but and so you can't really let the knees go too wide or the brick will fall. All right, so get yourself all set, and it might be all you want to do, but then when you press the tailbone forward and lift up, you won't have so far to go, but you'll be on a different spot in your back, which is nice. And you have to hold the chair down with your heels, and before you can start rolling over the back of the chair, you have to extend from your knees towards your shoulders and start to open up and stay broad. And then you can start to feel like you're rolling a little bit. So don't go right into rolling down, but extending more. And then you can sit back down. And sit up. So the higher you are, the more you're on a different spot on your spine. And we generally do just kind of open the shoulder blade area up. But really what we want to do when you're up higher, we start to really open the diaphragm area. And we always want to remember that the diaphragm is a muscle that actually needs to be exercised. And when we take those deep breaths, when we're in these weird shapes, that's great exercise for the diaphragm. So here we go again. And if you're not comfortable with where the chair is hitting you on your back, you can slide the tailbone towards your knees until you are. And then you still don't have to lift up so much, so you don't have to grip. What I like about this is you're not gripping so much, so you get to release and see how much you can open up the spine. Make sure you're breathing. And then first you extend before you start to roll backwards. And as you roll backwards, you still have to reach out into your knees. And then sit back down. I was trying to tell my teaching new students on Zoom is just a really challenging thing, and I was trying to tell my credit classes that no pain, no gain is not part of yoga, that they really need to listen to themselves. And so this is what I got back. You told us to listen to ourselves, and myself is saying I should wear socks. I'm not even having that argument with you. I am not even going to respond. No. Here, one more. Urdhva Dhanurasana with the chair. When you lift up, you want to do it from your tailbone, opening up the groin, lengthening the quad, supporting the legs from the hamstrings, rather than lifting up from the quad, and lifting up from the hamstrings and the tailbone. Lengthening before you decide to roll backwards. And then sit back down. One last one in a moment. So like I said, you're sitting up high, and if you decide that you don't like where you're hitting the back of the chair, you can finagle it with by sliding forward a little bit or sliding back a little bit and getting right where you want to be. To start to think that we spent a lot of time opening the sternal area, but here we're trying to open the diaphragm area. All right, so here we go. Make sure you're just pressing into the heels so that you don't tip your chair. And then down you come. So now we're going to do just one without the height on the chair seat. So let's take that off. I was down at, this is why I saw your sign, Dale. I was over at my friend Catherine and Earl's. I had to give them something, and they have a front yard full of that yellow aconite. It's just their whole front yard is yellow. It's cool. They said their backyard was all snowdrops, but I don't have any of that. I got to get some of that because it's really nice to see it right now. Bright yellow. You know, they're this high on the ground. All right, so now, when we have done this before, we put the shoulder blades right on the edge of the chair there so that they're off. And so what we learned from that is that you don't want the sternum to go into the body. You want the sternum to come out into the light. And so this will help with that a little bit. And as you go over, you also want to think that you want to open the diaphragm. All right? So this might feel a little more familiar, but try to add some of the other stuff to it. So here we go. You press into the heels, lift up from your tailbone, press towards your knees, lengthen towards your shoulders, and open up the diaphragm and lift up the tailbone. And try not to be effortful, just the way you were when you had those blankets on the chair seat. All right, and then sit back down. All right, so now let's do Setu Bandha with the stool, and have your feet either stool height or a little bit lower. And if this you want to start out, it's a deeper pose if you bring the heels lower than this height of the stool. But at the same time, you need to figure out if the stool is the right height for you without thinking about the height of your heels. So that's where you get to lift the floor up if you need to with some blankets. So we'll come in and out of this a couple times so that if you want to change the height of your heels, you can. I know a few of you have a hump, and it's about the same height as the stool. And you could use the hump under your tailbone, or you could use the hump under your feet. I'll use the stool under my tailbone because mostly everybody has a stool, but if you have a hump, you know how to use that under your tailbone. And then you just need to build up something that's about the height of the stool to start out for your heels. And then when we come down, if you decide you want the heels to be lower, you can build something lower. and you can soften up the stool. So I'm not sure today how high I need my blankets. And the main thing that you want to remember is that it's your sacrum, but not above the sacrum, that you want supported. So I start out with my tailbone forward of the stool, and then I lie down and find the floor with my elbows, and then I can tell that I'm touching my ribs with the stool. So I'm going to slide off a little bit until I feel like it's just my sacrum and pelvis that are on the stool. And then I'll roll my shoulders towards the stool and bring my shoulders down to the floor. And I want my shoulders and my upper arms and my whole head supported by the blanket, this purple blanket. But I might find that I need that floor higher, so I might need more blankets here. I've done this with 3 and 4 blankets. You could use a pig pad if you have one. And then you want your heels supported initially the same height as your stool. And so here's the thing. If that's not possible because it hurts your back or your front body's too tight, that's when you put more blankets under your shoulders and your head. You're trying to extend the legs so much that your thigh bones don't pop up, but they start to rest down. And you can see here, for me, my thigh bones are popping up a little bit. They're going up, which means that I've put myself in a position that I can't quite find Setu Bandha. I'm going to add a blanket under my head and shoulders. Must think that we're nuts because we're always talking to ourselves, and even when we're on the phone, we're just talking to ourselves, and they must just think we're nuts, or maybe they think we're talking to them. So here I added a blanket, and I can see that takes presses that leave my thigh bones much freer to start to rest down and still keep my chest open. So Tyra, I know that sometimes this situation doesn't work so well for you, so you want to make sure you've got lots of height under your head and shoulders. Okay, good, great. You want to keep your legs in line. They don't have to be together, but they should be parallel, which means that they can't be too wide or they wouldn't be parallel. And you can walk your upper arm bones underneath you to support your lifted chest a little bit, and you can rest your hand on your belly to observe your breath. here's the thing, and you can think about this while you're here. I'm going to want to bring my heels lower until my pelvis can very comfortably come parallel to the ceiling and the floor. So if your pelvis is still tipped towards your shoulders, then when we come down, your job would be to lift your shoulders and head a little bit so that you can get the pelvis more parallel to the floor. If you gotten the pelvis parallel to the floor, then you could see you still might want to lift the shoulders a little bit if you want to drop the heels so that you start to balance out the back bend between the shoulders and the heels more. So let's do that now. I think that you might want to just add height under your shoulders and your head so that you can get the pelvis more parallel rather than tipping back. So here it is tipping back, and that would just put if my pelvis was still tipping back and I wanted to bring my heels to the floor, it puts an enormous stress on my low back. And so before I bring my heels lower, I have to make sure that my shoulders are high enough that I can get my pelvis parallel. And then, maybe I want to lift my shoulders a little bit to drop my heels down and see what happens with that. But if you just bring the heels down and don't lift the shoulders, you still have to have that parallel pelvis without the stress on your low back. So I think I'm going to add a little height under my shoulders, and I'm going to drop a little height under my heels. That's what I did. I added a little height and took a little height out from under my heels. I feel more balanced, and I still feel like I've got my pelvis pretty parallel to the floor and the ceiling, but I feel more balanced, and so now I feel like I'm in a position where if I wanted to go deeper into this pose, I would shave the same amount under my heels and under my shoulders together and work my way down in this balanced position until my feet were on the floor and my shoulders were on the floor, which may never happen, who knows. But still, you can walk your upper arms underneath you, rest your palms on your diaphragm, and let them observe your breath. to do one last thing when we get up, but we're not quite ready to get up yet. And that's going to be, we're going to lift our heels back up to the height of the stool, and we're going to bring our legs to Baddha Konasana. That'll be the next one in just a moment. All right, so now you can come down carefully. And I've been sitting up, but you really should roll to the side. But if you sit up, you need to be careful that you don't hurt yourself. So now you want to bring the heels, you want what you're going to put your heels on maybe a little closer to you, because you're going to bring the legs to Baddha Konasana, and you're going to have the heels on a height that, again, is the height of your stool. That's our last one. And if Baddha Konasana is a challenging pose for you, then I think you should lift your shoulders a little bit higher in this last iteration. Whatever you might think of as challenging. It's challenging for me, but I don't consider it something that, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep my blanket the same. And just lift my heels back up to the height of my stool. Make sure you start so that you get the whole sacrum on there, and then slide the ribs and waistline off. And then there you are in Baddha Konasana. Sticking right on there. Now you want whatever that height is close to you, so that you can get the heels close to the perineum. Still, you'd like to get the shoulders and the upper arms underneath you a little bit, and you can put your hands on your diaphragm to observe your breath. Deep, smooth breath. In and out through the nose to stimulate your vagus nerve, which we need to find more out about. We need to find more information about it. All right, you can bring your knees together. Bring your knees in towards your chest. Give yourself a little hug. Just like an upside down fold in Virasana. And then when you're ready, Savasana, make sure you have your spine supported with a blanket or two. Not your sacrum, not your tailbone. That you have your head lifted a little bit higher, so that the head's a little higher than your heart and lungs, and that you've used something to cover the eyes. And your sandbags, if you have them. now when you're ready, roll to your right side and take some breaths before you support yourself in Sukhasana. Namaste. So I have a couple things. One is this session goes for 2 more weeks, and it ends on the 22nd because I think the 29th was part of the spring break or whatever. So I kind of stuck with our normal schedule. And so I'm going to send an email about the next schedule, whether we want to start on the 29th or we want to take that week off. But I also need to talk to Tyra and Edie a little bit about if they're going to be in live school on Mondays, and if we need to adjust our schedule for you guys. Okay, so you're going to be in school on Monday. Right, right. Whether you want to commit to yoga or to school. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you don't really know about yoga at all. Yeah. Yeah, and also like we could start later if you wanted us to accommodate you. So so we might just have to leave that up in the air for a little bit for you. Okay. All right. And how about you, Edie? I mean, that's so funny because you've been working from home all this time. Why you can't go home and do your planning at home? Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So there's that week off. So this session isn't going to be impacted by that. So we'll just I guess we'll just play it by ear. I'll just let you guys play it by ear, and we'll figure out what's going on for you guys. Um, and but do we just the 5 of you are here? Do we want to have class that week off, or do we want to take a week off? Okay. I think I might like to take a week off. Yeah. So I think we'll take that week off for the 29th, and so we'll start back up in April, and that'll give you more time to figure out what's happening, and we'll figure it out from there. That sounds good. Yeah. It doesn't seem as nerve-wracking to go back to school with the vaccine. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Talking into a camera. Yeah, I don't. That it is. The idea of having to Zoom and be in person. I can imagine, because if I was doing this, and then I also had all these people over here, just teaching yoga would be mind bending for me. Right? Did you see that meme about the big mistake that you make when you tell one of your students that their cat is really cute, and then everybody disappears and comes back 10 minutes later with a cat? I guess it's both. All right, so we kind of have a plan. We'll finish the session. We'll take a week off. We'll start up in April, and then we'll see how it's working. Right, right, right. That's funny though that you start and then you have a week off right away. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's probably true, because they put that date out, that March 24th or 25th, and they're gonna follow it no matter what. March 24th is the day that I'm 2 weeks out of my second vaccine. That's when I feel better. So yeah, that's when I can get my hair cut. I think I have an appointment on the 25th. Looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm sure it will be. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Good to see you, Dale. I'm sorry I didn't ask you about it. I apologize for not talking to you about it. I always forget. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, good. Yes. You want to just add it to the next session so that you only have to write one check? Yeah, it's not like I'm dying. Not like I need the money. I just bought myself a new iPhone, and I have to laugh because I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that stimulus, that $1,400, and I'm going to buy myself a new iPhone. But I already bought myself a new iPad and thought I was going to use it for that, so I've already used it twice. But I don't. But I'm okay. I'll just add it to your bill for the next session. Okay, Dale? Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it, and I know we've done this before, so that's fine with me. One check is fine. All right, all right.